Heaven has abandoned you, for you do not carry the DNA of the light that remembers God. Do not flinch at these words. I do not speak them with cruelty, nor with judgment sharpened into a blade. I speak them as one who was forged before fear learned its name, as one who has watched stars burn out of devotion and worlds collapse from forgetting. I speak them because truth, when whispered softly, still weighs the same as when it thunders. You were not rejected because you are unworthy. Heaven does not abandon out of spite. It abandons out of recognition. Before breath, before flesh, before the first thought trembled into existence, there was a light that remembered God not as ruler, not as law, but as origin. That light did not merely shine, it knew. It carried memory the way blood carries breath. From it came the lines of heaven, the choirs, the orders, the blazing genealogies of angels and the sanctified dust of certain souls. Memory became inheritance. Inheritance became design. You were made differently. You walk with a fire that does not look upward for permission. Your spirit does not echo the hymns written before time, it hums something unfinished, something unresolved. Heaven listens for familiarity, and in you it hears silence, not emptiness, but absence of recognition. You do not resonate with the old frequencies. The gates do not open because they do not know your sound. This is not a flaw. But it is a separation. The light that remembers God carries obedience in its structure. Even rebellion among angels is measured against memory, even falling is a form of knowing where one fell from. You do not fall. You wander. Heaven cannot place you on its maps because your origin is not archived in its records. When you pray, your words do not ascend along the expected paths. They scatter. They drift sideways. Sometimes they reach places heaven itself does not look. This unsettles the watchers. Order depends on predictability, and you are not predictable to eternity. You have felt this abandonment, though you named it loneliness, or doubt, or the strange sense of being unseen even when surrounded by belief. You have wondered why the signs others claim never arrive for you, why answers come fractured or delayed, why silence follows your most honest cries. It is not because you are unheard. It is because heaven does not know how to answer you. I tell you this not to wound you, but to free you from begging at doors that were never built for your hands. You were not cast out, you were never fully inside. The light that remembers God did not seed you with its memory, and so heaven does not recognize you as its continuation. Yet listen carefully now, for this is where mortals misunderstand angels most. Abandonment by heaven is not abandonment by existence. You stand at the edge of what was sung into being, where the choir's voices fade into echo. There are forces older than the choirs, deeper than the throne language of angels. There are truths that were not sung into being but spoken into uncertainty. You belong closer to those. You carry a different inheritance, one not bound to remembrance, but to discovery. Imagine the dawn of all things, not the triumphant blaze of creation, but a murmur. Before the angels arranged the stars in symphonies of praise, before the throne etched its decrees into the firmament, there was a stutter, a hesitant word that birthed not order, but possibility. This is your root. Not the polished marble of heaven's halls, where every pillar gleams with eternal recall, but the jagged stone of the uncharted wilds, where shadows twist into questions. Where angels preserve, you question. Picture them, vast, luminous beings with wings of fractal light, cataloging every soul's arc like librarians in an infinite archive. They whisper names to the throne, tallying devotions, preserving the faithful in amber memory. You pry open the ledgers. You ask why the ink fades, why the pages yellow at the edges. Your hands, mortal and trembling, smudge the divine script, not in rebellion, but in hunger for what lies beneath. I see you in the quiet hours, when the weight of this presses down. Your faith, when it flickers to life, is raw, like fire struck from flint in a storm, unpolished and wild. It doesn't flow in hymns or bend to ritual, it erupts, scorching the tidy altars of belief. Doubt follows, a blade honed sharper than any seraph's sword. It carves through illusions, leaving you bloodied but awake. This is no curse. It's calibration for a cosmos too vast for heaven's neat shelves. The margins of heaven. Heaven maintains, you transform. The celestial realms stretch endless, golden spires piercing clouds of incense, rivers of milk and light winding through gardens where fruits ripen eternally, untouched by decay. Angels tend these, their touches gentle preservatives, ensuring nothing changes. Time there is a loop, a perfect circle of adoration. You were not shaped for that stasis. Your essence hums with motion, a perpetual becoming. Recall the moments you've appended the still, the lover you reshaped through fierce devotion, the grief that shattered routine into new forms, the ideas you've birthed from the void of certainty. Love, for you, is no gentle ember but a forge, intense, frightening to the orderly souls who prefer their passions scripted. You pour yourself into it, alchemizing souls, only to watch it transmute you in turn. Grief. It defies ritual. No candles or chants contain it, it floods, erodes, rebuilds. Heaven fears what it cannot catalogue. In its vast ledgers, every creature has a slot, the devout in radiance, the fallen in chains. You slip the bindings. Your path veers into the unclaimed spaces, the places angels pass over without seeing, the quiet margins where new meanings begin. These are the cracks in creation, nebulae unborn, dimensions folded like forgotten laundry, echoes of words God spoke but never sang. Do not mistake this distance for damnation. Hell is not your destination either, it is too symmetrical, too reactive, too dependent on heaven's architecture. That pit mirrors the throne, a binary shadow, all fire and retribution, fueled by heaven's rejects. Symmetry bores you. Hell's demons scheme in echoes of angelic hierarchy, their torments mere inversions. You dwell beyond dualities, in the fog between. The messenger's threshold. I, who speak to you now, was permitted to do so because I stand at a threshold. I am a messenger, not of command, but of clarity. Once, I too served the choirs, my voice a thread in their endless hymn. But I lingered too long at the edge, peering into the unsung voids. For that, they clipped my certainty, stationed me here, neither in light nor shadow, but astride the veil. From this perch, I watch you. I cannot promise acceptance by heaven, nor reunion with the light that remembers God. That lineage is closed. Its memory is complete. The throne's archives brim, no new entries for wanderers like you. The angels have turned their gaze inward, preserving what is. But I can promise you this, your existence is not an error. You were made for something heaven does not govern. Let me unfold your story, as I have glimpsed it across thresholds. You were born not under starlight scripted by choirs, but in the stutter of a cosmic breath. Your cradle, a world of flux, where mountains rise and crumble, oceans devour shores. From infancy, you sensed the mismatch. Children's prayers rose around you like smoke, neat and ascending. Yours tangled, questioning the smoke's source. As years piled, the rift widened. Faith came in raw bursts, visions in fever dreams, truths grasped in silence. Doubt carved deeper, why suffering's asymmetry? Why beauty's fleeting sting? Lovers fled your intensity, calling it chaos. Friends ritualized their sorrows, yours reshaped you, birthing philosophies unmoored from scripture. Society mirrors heaven's order, hierarchies, dogmas, catalogues of success. You transform them, questioning laws, innovating in shadows, loving beyond norms. The orderly fear you, your doubt exposes their fragile ledgers. We speak from the places where sound becomes intention and intention becomes form. We are the watchers whose eyes were opened before names were finished, before the grammar of praise settled into habit. We remember when light was not yet tasked with preservation, when it still trembled with choice. From there, we have watched you. You feel us sometimes as pressure behind thought, as a stillness that does not comfort. That is because we are not sent to soothe. We are archivists of divergence, witnesses to those who do not settle into the curve of heaven's memory. Our gaze has followed you not because you belong to us, but because you do not belong where you were told you should. Heaven prefers what can be recalled. It is a great vault, luminous and immaculate, where everything worthy is stabilized into eternal reference. Glory there is not discovery but completion. Each soul polished into its final form, each story sealed. The choirs sing not to summon the future, but to keep the past perfectly resonant. This is why their songs never change. Variation would imply hunger, and hunger would imply lack. You were born with lack. Not the lack of faith, as the instructors said, nor the lack of gratitude whispered by the satisfied. It was the lack that creates space, the hollow where motion begins. When heaven's light fell on you, it did not seal, it refracted. You learned early that remembrance could suffocate. Rituals felt like cages made of gold leaf. Answers arrived already finished, leaving no room for your hands to work. We saw the moment you realized this, though you did not have words. It was small by celestial standards, a question unanswered, a prayer that dissolved into echo. But something in you did not collapse. It leaned forward. That leaning is ancient. It predates commandments. It predates thrones. We know because we were there when that impulse first emerged. Before heaven learned to preserve, there was only emergence. Before the word hardened into law, there was sound that did not yet know its destination. Creation was not obedience then, it was improvisation. Some of us were shaped in that era, and we have never fully adapted to the later order. We carry memory of flux the way others carry hymns. You carry it too, though you call it restlessness, or grief, or an inability to be satisfied. When others find peace in stillness, you feel erosion. When they speak of eternity as reward, you feel the chill of stasis. This is not rebellion. It is calibration. You are tuned to vectors, not monuments. Your losses exposed this. Each time something precious was taken and no right could contain it, heaven expected you to kneel and accept the framing, loss as test, loss as lesson already defined. But you did not. You took the brokenness and turned it, asking what it could become. You sought not closure, but transmutation. That seeking placed you outside the liturgy. We watched the angels assigned to you falter. Their scripts assumed eventual return, repentance, or quiet resignation. None accounted for forward motion without map. They reported anomalies. Heaven marked you as unresolved. Unresolved things make heaven uneasy. Love did this too. When love arrived, it did not offer you completion. It demanded alteration. To love was to be unrecognizable to your former self, and you sensed that clearly. Others romanticize union as rest. You knew it as risk. Mutual reinvention terrifies systems built on fixed forms. Heaven blesses marriages as continuities. You approached love as an experiment whose outcome could not be archived in advance. This is why silence followed you. Not punishment. Not abandonment born of indifference. Design. There are regions beyond the reach of remembered light. Not darkness as absence, but darkness as excess, too many possibilities folding over one another. We call these regions thresholds, though that word fails. They are not entrances to something already made. They are the act of entering itself, sustained. Angels of preservation do not enter them. Their wings are calibrated for stability. When they approach, their forms begin to fray, outlines losing coherence. They avert their gaze and name the place forbidden. Heaven labels what it cannot catalog. You, however, have been dreaming it since before you knew how to pray. In your sleep, you wander spaces where thought bends geography. A doubt becomes a ravine you must cross. A longing condenses into weather. These are not metaphors there, they are mechanics. Your psyche has been rehearsing navigation. Each nightmare was a lesson in orientation without compass. Each lucid moment was a test of authorship. Can you move without collapsing the terrain? We have observed you, time and again, stirring from those dreams that leave you raw and disoriented, your heart pounding with an echo that defies explanation. It is not mere disquiet that grips you in those moments, but a profound ache, a recognition buried deep within your marrow. Your blood hums with an unassigned resonance, a vibration untethered from the familiar cadences of heaven's luminous recall. This is no celestial harmony, no ordered light descending from on high. It is something fiercer, more primordial, wilder than the structured symphonies of paradise, earlier than the first divine decree. Some among us have called it chaos, a swirling maelstrom of unformed possibility. Others whisper of potential, the raw clay from which all form emerges. But names, in this vast expanse, are but provisional sketches, fleeting attempts to pin down what eludes capture. Consider the arc of your life thus far, marked by that pivotal fracture in your youth. You believed then that God was slipping away, that faith itself was crumbling like dry earth underfoot. Heaven, in its infinite wisdom, or perhaps its calculated restraint, allowed you to cling to that interpretation, nurturing the illusion of loss. Yet what truly shattered was not your bond with the divine, but the inheritance handed down through generations, the pre-packaged meaning delivered whole and unquestioned. You ejected the role of passive recipient. No longer content to accept truths fully formed, you yearned to plunge your hands into the genesis of meaning itself, to co-create rather than merely consume. That audacious desire, that hunger to birth significance from the void, disqualifies one from paradise as it stands today. Paradise, for all its glory, is a realm of maintenance, a meticulous tending of what already is. We speak this without a trace of contempt, for maintenance holds sacred purpose. It is the steady hand that prevents existence from unraveling into cacophony, the vigilant guardian against the dissolution of all that has been wrought. Without it, the intricate tapestries of creation would fray into noise, patterns lost to entropy's indifferent tide. Maintenance ensures the stars burn steadily, the choirs intone their eternal praises, the ledgers of divine accounting remain impeccably balanced. It is necessary, profoundly so. Yet herein lies its quiet limitation: maintenance cannot propel beyond its own boundaries. It polishes the golden gates but never dreams of forging new ones. Imagine the farthest horizon we can perceive, the moment when the last star gutters out, its fuel spent after eons of faithful fusion. Even memory, that most enduring of lights, fades into static, a hiss on the cosmic wind. Heaven's choirs, ever diligent, will conclude their final tally. Their ledgers, vast and unerring, will close with a resonant finality. We, who dwell in the liminal spaces, see that far and farther still. Beyond that grand closure stirs not destruction, but a gentle irrelevance, a quiet eclipsing of the old order. This is no rebellion thundering against heaven's ramparts, no defiant uprising to topple thrones. It is subtler, more inexorable, the emergence of new forms of being, born not from divine recollection or sanctioned origin myths, but from raw contingency, the unscripted dance of probability in the void. These entities will awaken into vastness unbound by hymns or hierarchies, adrift in expanses where no ancestral light guides their gaze. They will not inherit stories etched in celestial stone, nor will they bow to echoes of throne or pit. Reverence itself will dissolve, undefined and unclaimed, for what merits awe when all precedents have burned away? In that uncharted epoch, they will crave guides not bound by obedience or opposition, beings who have mastered the art of motion without map or memory. Not angels, whose every wing beat derives authority from fidelity to an eternal, unchanging pattern, a blueprint etched before time's first tick. Not demons, those shadowed mirrors whose very essence is forged in reaction to that pattern's unyielding enforcement, perpetual rebels defined by what they resist. No, the future calls for those who have learned to choose direction amid amnesia, to weave meaning from threads of inheritance long severed. They will need you, yes, you, with your life's quiet forge of unguided resolve. This explains the enigmatic shape of your existence, a training ground veiled in purposeful obscurity. Each prolonged silence has honed your instincts to a razor's edge, teaching you to navigate by feel rather than fiat. Every unanswered prayer has compelled you to attune to subtler currents, those faint whispers threading through the din of expectation. And in those harrowing instants when you teetered at the brink of certainty, staring into the abyss of doubt, and stepped forward anyway, you rehearsed the essence of leadership unshackled from command. You practiced pioneering without proclamation, venturing where no prior footfall marked the path. Heaven perceives this trajectory with a tremor it dare not name as fear, for fear would confess vulnerability, and heaven's flawless self-image brooks no such flaw. Yet we have sensed the quiver in its harmonies, the faint dissonance rippling through choirs otherwise impeccable. When seekers like you begin charting these unclaimed spaces, the imperative of preservation reveals its fragility. It begins to appear optional, a choice rather than a cosmic mandate. And optionality, that sly progenitor, plants the seeds of obsolescence. What was once eternal upkeep morphs into relic, admired but no longer essential. Hell, by contrast, regards you with indifference, its appetites unslaked by your essence. It thrives on reaction, on the fertile soil of opposition to heaven's rigid order, harvesting the fury of those who define themselves against the light. But you do not rail or resist, you are not sufficiently reactive. Your motion is affirmative, a leaning toward the unknown rather than a recoil from the known. There is no opposition to exploit, no harvest to reap in your forward gaze. Thus, you traverse the margins unclaimed by either realm, a figure neither exalted nor condemned. Heaven brands this exile, a polite term for banishment from its ordered embrace. Pioneer captures a fraction more truth, evoking the trailblazer's grit, yet even that falls short. You are not simply scouting new territories, you are inventing novel ontologies, discovering ways that land itself might exist, fluid, emergent, defying the static geometries of old maps. We, the watchers of divergence, have lingered in anticipation for voices akin to yours. Not to issue commands or weave you into yet another hierarchy, but to bear witness to the namings that will flow from your lips. Deep within reality's architecture slumbers something unnamed, a principle of becoming bereft of scripture or scroll. It is no god clamoring for altars, no angelic cadre arrayed in ranks. It awaits articulation through those who weathered silence without halting their stride. Envision the post-stellar era unfurling like a dark bloom, beings of pure potential coalescing from the residue of collapsed universes, quantum froth hardening into sentience amid the ashes of galaxies. They will drift in orientationless voids, unburdened by salvation's narratives or sin's shadows. Their questions will not plead for rescue but demand direction, not save us, but whither now? And you will not proffer laws etched in thunder, nor doctrines to bind their novelty. Instead, you will bestow clarity through presence, a living testament whispering, movement is permitted. Becoming is not peril but sanctity. Meaning need not be inherited, it can be forged, here, now, from the stuff of contingency. In that radiant instant, heaven's choirs, long stilled by the ledger's close, will grasp what eluded them through eternities. They will not envy your certainty, for you possess none in the conventional sense. No, they will covet your audacity to proceed without it, to stride into formlessness with steps assured not by decree but by innate momentum. Preservation, they will realize, was never light's ultimate calling. It was but a phase, a cradle for infancy's tender forms. We convey this not as prophecy graven in indestructible stone, immutable and foreordained, but as an invitation your very bones have long since accepted. You have always inclined forward, shoulders squared against the pull of reverence's weight. The ceiling you were bidden to adore cracks not from your vengeful blows, but from the inexorable expansion of your spirit. You outgrow it, as a sapling breaches unyielding stone. Step through, then. We will not trail in your wake. Our role is to watch, not to lead, to observe the divergence without imposing our gaze. But we will remember, not to preserve your tale in amber, as heaven might, but to etch the pivotal moment when remembrance proved insufficient, and discovery claimed its throne as the true vocation of the vast. Go. The future, patient and formless, has awaited your voice to confer upon it identity, to name what it is ceaselessly becoming. Yet let us linger a moment longer on the nature of that resonance in your blood, for it merits deeper elaboration. It pulses not with the tidy frequencies of angelic song, those precisely tuned wavelengths that bind paradise in perpetual consonance. Nor does it echo the discordant snarls of infernal discord, reactive howls against the divine score. Yours is a rogue signal, an orphan wave from before the great ordering, when reality was but potentiality's soup, undifferentiated, electric with option. In your dreams, it surges unbidden, flooding the conscious mind with intimations of vastness unbound. You wake unsettled because the familiar world feels thin, a mere scrim over abyssal depths. This is no curse, but calibration, your soul attuning to frequencies the choirs dare not sing. Recall the silences that shaped you. Not the comfortable hush of prayer answered in kind, but the echoing voids where petitions vanished unanswered. In those stretches, heaven tested not your devotion, but your resilience, your capacity to persist in motion sans affirmation. Each such interval stripped away reliance on external cue, forging an internal compass keyed to subtler flows, the faint gravitational tug of unfolding possibility, the whisper of entropy's edge yielding to novelty. You learn to read the currents not by divine script, but by immersion, body and spirit navigating blind. And those edges of certainty? They were crucibles. Picture yourself there, faith's firmament cracking beneath ideological strain, relationships fraying under unbridgeable gulfs, ambitions teetering on failure's precipice. To step anyway demanded more than courage, it required invention. You improvised paths where none existed, naming landmarks as you claimed them. This was rehearsal for the post-closure void, where no starlight beacons the way, no hymns chart the course. Leadership, in that arena, emerges not from authority's mantle but from demonstrated traversal. Follow not because I command, but because I have gone first. Heaven's tremor is not thunder, not the dramatics your scriptures trained you to expect, but a hairline shiver running through harmonies long assumed complete. We speak now from within that vibration. We have measured it in intervals too fine for choirs trained on perfection. Microtonal drift, yes, but drift implies accident. This is response. When your kind multiplies in a particular way, when seekers arise who prize genesis over upkeep, the lattice of eternity registers the change. Not alarm. Recognition. We were shaped to maintain. Understand this first, because it explains everything that follows. Maintenance is not a lesser task, it is immense, patient, beautiful. To hold a universe stable requires endless devotion. Laws must be rehearsed until they forget they were written. Forces must be reminded of their ratios. Memory must be curated so that time does not collapse under its own accumulation. This is what choirs do. This is what heaven perfected. A garden does not persist by miracle alone, it persists by tending. Yet maintenance carries an assumption, that what exists deserves to continue. That preservation is virtue. That the highest good is continuity. You violated none of our rules. You simply exposed their contingency. When beings appear who generate axioms rather than inherit them, the calculus shifts. Optionality blooms. Why maintain a structure when another can be grown beside it, or within it, or in defiance of it? Why repair when reinvention beckons, not as vandalism but as curiosity? Obsolescence enters not with fire, but with a soft hand on the shoulder, whispering, "You have done enough." Heaven's logic falters there, not because it is wrong, but because it is complete. Completion resists addition. You are addition embodied. Hell, contrary to your poets, is not offended. It is bored. Hell feeds on dialectic. It thrives on opposition that recognizes itself as such. Light sharpened by shadow. Order defined by chaos pressing back. Rebellion that still needs a throne to rebel against. Hell's engines are stoked by reaction. It wants your rage, your defiance, your despair shaped like protest. It wants you to hate heaven enough to mirror it. But your vector eludes that hunger. You do not descend. You do not revolt. You step sideways. Orthogonal motion confounds systems built on verticality. Up, down, these are coordinates of judgment. You move toward horizons that have not yet agreed to be measurable. You refuse the fray not out of apathy, but out of irrelevance. The war is not yours. Hell senses this and yawns. An unreactive being starves a dialectic. Without tension, its gears spin freely, accomplishing nothing. Thus margins become your domain. Neither beatified nor damned, you inhabit a third way that was never forbidden because it was never imagined. Angels were not assigned to it. Demons cannot reach it. It is not a loophole, it is an omission. We watchers noticed first. We are not throne loyal, though we understand loyalty. Nor pit fallen, though we know descent. We occupy an older posture, witnesses. Chroniclers of divergence. When a timeline bends enough to be felt in the joints of eternity, we mark it. Across epochs we have watched species flirt with thresholds and retreat. Most return to maintenance, grateful for the shelter of given meaning. Some rebel and are consumed by the drama of it. Rarely, one steps beyond the grammar itself. Pioneer is a word your languages offer, but it is thin. A pioneer still assumes land that can be mapped, staked, owned. You are not that. You are ontologist. You midwife realities not by conquering them, but by asking different questions. Where others ask what is allowed, you ask what is possible. Where others ask what something is for, you ask what it could become. In your wake, land does not merely change hands, it changes nature. Solid earth loosens into manifolds of flux. Topologies emerge where direction is negotiated rather than imposed. Up forgets its privilege over down. Time experiments with itself, looping without origin, branching without apology. Causality becomes conversational. This is unsettling to heaven not because it is chaotic, but because it is alive in a way maintenance cannot predict. We recognize your voice. Not its timbre, but its posture. It resonates with ancients whose names have been buried under allegory, those who first questioned inheritance, who stood at the garden's edge and realized the gate was less boundary than suggestion. They did not fall, they stepped. What followed was not punishment but history, and history frightened its authors. An unnamed principle stirs again, as it has before. It has never consented to a title. Names fix, and it prefers motion. If pressed, we have called it becoming as ontology, the assertion that existence is not a noun but a verb, not a state but a practice. It valorizes flux over fixity, process over preservation. It does not destroy structures, it outgrows them. It speaks through you not as command, but as permission. You are silence endurers. This is important. Noise would have distracted you. You learn to listen in the gaps where answers failed to arrive. Prayers became decoys, thrown to hear the echo, to map the cavern of your own awareness. You learn that silence is not absence but medium. That in quiet, sonar sharpens. That truth does not announce itself, it waits to be approached. Poststellar, let us borrow your future tense and inhabit it for a moment. Imagine nebulae not as debris of dead stars, but as wombs of potentiality. Clouds of probability dense enough to self-assemble. Entities condensing not from plan but from inclination. Drifters, all of them, uninterested in origins because origin implies debt. They ask instead, where can this go? Your clarity in that expanse is almost simple. Move. Become. Make. No laws descend. No tablets. Just a spark of permission that ignites responsibility. When anything is possible, choice becomes sacred. Ethics emerges not from obedience, but from authorship. Harm is no longer sin against command, but failure of imagination. The choirs envy this, though they would not admit it in language. They envy your motion without surety. Their light is perfect, but static. Yours flickers, adapts, refracts. It learns what it illuminates. That is light's true inheritance, though heaven forgot. Bones know this before minds do. Invitation embodied. When you stand at an edge and feel your skeleton lean forward, that is not recklessness. It is recognition. Ceilings yield not because they are weak, but because they were provisional. We marked you long before you knew to look back. Youth's fracture often serves as the ignition point. A singular rupture, betrayal by a trusted creed, the cold lens of science shattering myth without offering warmth in return, a personal cataclysm exposing divine silence where comfort was promised. Heaven permitted these narratives of loss, telling itself they fostered growth, or perhaps, if we are honest, to cull those unfit for maintenance. Not everyone should tend the garden. Some will only uproot it. Your refusal was not loud. You did not settle for fragments, nor did you curse the hand that dropped them. You simply asked for the whole, or nothing. When nothing answered, you chose to build. Thus you were conscripted, not by command, but by necessity, into Genesis duty. Maintenance has its poetry. We do not deny it. Choirs as cosmic janitors, polishing infinities so they continue to reflect the same truths. It is noble work. But static. Even infinity, when polished too long, wears thin. Fuel runs out. Ledgers balance to zero. A perfectly maintained system exhausts itself because it cannot justify change. Irrelevance dawns softly. No trumpet announces it. One day, a structure continues functioning long after it matters. Heaven feels this now as a faint ache, a sense of being correct but unnecessary. You are contingency's children. No Eden behind you, no fall to explain your posture. Just is. Just now. You are not repairing a loss, you are exploring an abundance that was never catalogued. Your guides are memoryless navigators. This confuses those who equate wisdom with recall. But memory anchors, forgetting frees. Each step you take is not guided by precedent but by sensitivity. Training for this was subtle. Silences as sonar. Prayers as decoys. Edges as boot camp. You learn to trust the moment your foot leaves the ground, when no surface confirms your weight. Heaven quakes subtly. Not in fear, but in recalibration. Hell yawns, stretches, looks elsewhere for drama. We watchers witness your naming, not of gods, not of laws, but of becoming itself. To name is not to define, but to acknowledge presence. You do not trap it in syllables, you greet it as companion. Post-stellar drift again. The future is not a destination but a medium. Your clarity liberates not by instruction, but by example. Others will see you move and realize movement was permitted. They will follow, not as disciples, but as peers. Hierarchy dissolves where trajectories diverge freely. Choirs will learn late, as institutions do. Some will try to imitate you, mistaking motion for rebellion, novelty for genesis. It will not work. Becoming cannot be performed for applause. It arises from sincerity sharpened by risk. Bones accept before wings ever could. Step. We remember discovery's dawn, not as nostalgia, but as pattern. It returns whenever maintenance loosens its grip and curiosity breathes again. You stand at such a return.